in disguise, my hero. I see your light in the dark, smile in my face when we all know it's hard. There's no way to ever pay you back. Bless your heart, know I love you for that. Honest and selfless, I don't know if this helps it, but good job. You're doing a good job, a good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, 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 yeah. You're doing a good job, a good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, 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 yeah. 6 in the morning, and soon as you walk through that door, everyone needs you again. The world's out of order. It's not as sound when you're not around. All day on your feet, harder. Keep that energy. I know when it feels like the end of the road, you don't let go. You just press forward. You're the engine that makes all things go. Always in disguise, my hero. I see a light in the dark. Smile in my face when we all know it's hard. There's no way to ever pay you back. Bless your heart, know I love you for that. Honest and selfless, I don't know if this helps it, but good job. You're doing a good job, a good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, matter, matter. Yeah, it's a good job. Doing a good job, a good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, matter, matter. The mothers, the fathers, the teachers that feed us, strangers and friends that show up in the end. From the bottom to the top, the listeners that hear us, this is for you. You make me feel less. Oh, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, 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 yeah. No, no, no.
Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Bredos, and I'm a sociologist who's taught at Yeshiva University and John Jay College of Criminal Justice here in New York City. The life, hope, and health of billions of people around the world has been shattered. The coronavirus has put the world's economy in survival mode, with little hope for global economic rebound in 2020 or the foreseeable future. That's the simple, brutal reality. The way we respond to this human catastrophe will go far in determining the future of life on the planet. In the recent so-called stimulus package, most small businesses being rescued are landlords. They've received the most Small Business Administration loans, usually by going through the local political party machines. With the Republicans or Democrats, and when they talk about small business, they usually mean landlords, who are in fact the proxies for big real estate interests and the banks behind them. The bill pretends that by giving money to the banks to lend more money to get the country moving again, the economy will be rescued. Yet the exact opposite is true. A relatively small part of the $2 trillion surplus goes to citizens to spend, but ends up largely being paid through leases, taxes, rents, interest, mortgages, loans to the banks and landlords. You think the virus hit you hard? Wait till they hit you with the financial bill. The bailout enables the financial sector to extract so much money from the economy and drive so many small businesses under. Big vulture capital and private equity firms can and will be able to pick them up at ridiculously low prices. It's an enormous giveaway for real estate and gives these interests and corporate lobbyists a wish they've been waiting years for. And they have it. They have their crisis opportunity, an excuse to not only be bailed out as if they're losing money, but to evict their tenants, throwing more and more workers out of work and further injuring the economy. Today in the Radical Imagination, I'm really honored and blessed to have two political activists and organizers who understand the survival reality that small businesses, workers, the poor, and tenants are facing. Steve Null is a longtime community activist for the Small Business Congress. He's been intimately involved in their decades-long fight to establish the Small Business Job Survival Act in New York. Anthony Miranda is a candidate for Queens Borough President and is running on the strongest progressive platform in the race. His platform includes Medicare for all, a homes guarantee, abolishing ICE, putting a moratorium on development projects, and making massive investment for our infrastructure. He's a retired, decorated NYPD police sergeant of over 20 years, founder and president of the National Latino Officers Association, prominently portrayed in 4 documentaries, including the award-winning Crime Plus Punishment, and has been endorsed by, among many others, the Small Business Congress. So Steve and Anthony, welcome to the Radical Imagination. It's great to have you here and to discuss this incredibly vital issue and series of issues and the survival, literally, of millions and millions, if not billions, of people around the world. So again, thank you for being here, and appreciate so much you taking your time to be here.
Happy to be with you.
Terrific. So, Steve, you want to try us out first by giving us a brief summary of what you and the Small Business Congress has been trying to accomplish over the decades, why it's an even greater crisis today, and then let's hear from Anthony and how he might respond to your comments.
Yes. First of all, the truth is that New York City's small businesses are more vulnerable to closing forever than any city in the country. And the reason why, it's very simple, that they faced a crisis before the virus crisis because of the high rents and speculations and the decades of real estate speculation. And they were going out of business over 1,000 a month before the virus crisis. And that's why we wrote our legislation, the Small Business Survival Act, to give them rights when their leases expired to negotiate 10-year leases and to negotiate reasonable rent terms and to remain in business. Because without this bill, they were going out, every business, regardless of how long you were there, was going to be in jeopardy of closing because of the high rents. Now, what's happened is, and this is what the lawmakers don't want the public to know, is that they purposely, with the backing of the real estate industry, blocked every small business owner from receiving the rights that this bill offered. They denied economic justice for all of these small businesses. They created the crisis, and they were rewarded for this by having the real estate lobby give tons of money to the campaigns of all of the machine candidates in exchange for them to ignore this crisis. Now they can't ignore it. And the virus crisis has made it almost impossible for the businesses to go back to normal, because normal in New York City is not having any rights and being forced to close. Normal is empty stores on every block where thriving businesses were. This is the outcome of corruption. This is the outcome of the political machine. And this is the reason that we endorsed candidates like Anthony Miranda, because we've dealt with the Queen's machine, and they'll never give any rights to the small business owners, and mostly immigrants.
Well, Steve, that's a perfect segue. There you go, Anthony. They've endorsed you. Give us your comments on what Steve just has said.
Listen, he's actually right on point. We met before the campaign started. I understand that everything that he's spoken about is right on point. The crisis, like anything else, is exposing the things that are the failures that are past practices, right? Because small businesses were already suffering. We were already losing them by the hundreds of thousands. And there has been no relief at all to address it. And the current bill that's in the city council, that they have the power and had the power all along to pass, they chose not to, right? So we don't need any more delays. And like he's saying, we don't need to go back to business as usual, because business as usual, politics as usual is what crippled us to begin with.
Right.
So going back to a place that's already, it's a no starter for us, right? It's a no starter for small business owners. And everybody agrees that small business are the backbone of the community, local services, local employment. They're the ones that make the economy robust. But there is no relief. And even think about the relief package. I ask very simple questions about the relief package. We have representatives at every level that could answer these questions, that could ask for answers. How many businesses applied? How many business owners in Queens applied? How many actually got relief? How much was the relief that they received? And what type of companies was it given to? How many were women-owned or minority-owned businesses? How many were already on the verge of being pushed out? So again, simple answers. We're not asking complicated information. If they're giving out these loans, and then it gave the banks the ability to choose which businesses qualify or get the loans, why would the banks be the people? And you had to have a prior relationship. So when we start talking about minority-owned business and women-owned business, generally they don't have the developed long-term relationships with the banking institutions when they're the ones who are now deciding who gets the money.
Great point. Steve.
Let me comment on something that he said.
Sure.
The loan programs and have been around for a while. There's been initiatives to help small business, and the bottom line is that they've all failed for very good reason. Is that the small businesses must have longer term leases. They must have the ability to negotiate reasonable costs, reasonable rents, and that's been denied them. Now, the only way that our small businesses will be able to bounce back and survive and hire people and get back to normal is that they have to have 10-year leases. Without that guarantee of rights and 10-year leases, then it's very doubtful that a lot of these businesses will want to go back in. And let me just make this point.
Sure.
In the process of our government encouraging real estate speculation from all over the world, opening the doors for real estate speculation, come to New York City, come to Queens, come to Bronx and invest here because we will maximize your profit. We will make the perfect environment for real estate speculation. In the process of doing that, they took away the opportunity for small businesses to thrive, to grow. And they put these people on month-to-month leases, one-year leases, in order to make their property available for the speculators. They punished the capitalists, mostly the immigrants. And this is the problem, that now along came a crisis on top of a crisis. And here are these businesses with short-term leases, which makes the loans ridiculous. You can't use them. They don't qualify for loans.
Right.
Who's going to take out a loan if you only have a year left on your lease? Who's going to take out a loan, or even 2 years? There is no option. Let's be clear about this stuff. There is no option.
And let's say, think about the things that we're asking. They are not unreasonable. We're not asking for something extraordinary. These are basic support mechanisms that would help them thrive. So again, so when we're looking at what we're asking for, people can say, wow, well, that's too much. It's not nearly enough to solve the problem, right? But it is a starting point. It is a starting point to creating balance and creating equity and giving the opportunity for growth. So it's not, again, we're not asking for things that are unreasonable.
Mhm.
It just makes sense. It just makes sense.
Economic
Well-
justice. And yet, Steve, you've been working on this for what, 3 decades, trying to get this?
Yeah.
So you've had a long history working with the machines of both parties, right?
Well, here's the problem that we've had is that
Yeah.
the real estate lobby has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger because they've made a pact with the machines, the local machines, and they literally control the city council. And so it was easy for them to block it, even with in the face of empty stores. I mean, we held a hearing in 2009 with David Yatsky, and he's told everybody there is no option. We have to stop the closing of the businesses first and foremost. And we had 32 sponsors of this bill, and the Survival Act was chosen as the only solution to stop the closing. You had to give the business owners rights. The real estate stepped in and they stopped it. They started rigging. That rigging has continued to this very day with Speaker Johnson. But one of the biggest components of the rigging is the Queen's machine. Now, this is another reason that we endorsed Anthony, is because the Queen's machine is more behind stopping the economic justice for the immigrant small business owners than any other machine in New York City.
Yeah, and it's been highly documented already about how many of these candidates that are running for Queensborough president who are taking that money, who have taken the money in the past and continue to take the money from these real estate developers. In fact, we had one forum for business owners, right, for real estate people. And when I say I don't take money from big developers, and I think Donovan Richards actually said at the debate, well, women don't want to give him money. If Anthony won't take your money, I'll take your money. And
Wow.
The newspapers have already documented Donovan Richards, Costa Constantinides, and Liz Crowley as all taking that money. So they're already compromised. Their interest doesn't lie in how to help the community and small business owners. Their interest lies in the people who are funding them and giving them that money, and a huge amounts of money to support their campaigns. And that's who they're going to continue to side for. And that's why we need a change. Again, imagine that he's been having this since 2009, having hearings about the same issue. It hasn't changed. It's gotten worse, and there's still no relief. So again, what we've been asking for and saying the Queensborough president has the ability to mobilize and use the pulpit and use the voice and mobilize all the elected officials and say, it is time. It is long overdue. And in the midst of the crisis that we're coming out of, and the crisis that we're going to face going forward, if we don't support the small business owners right now, immediately, not through these loan programs that obviously are not controlled and are not getting to the people who need it the most,
right,
but there has to be some real change and real support. And that bill goes a long way to getting that done.
Let me just add something to that. I'm glad you brought that up. Because of the virus crisis, this isn't an issue right now of what to do. There is no option. Understand that businesses that have been in a crisis and are just hanging on, and I use that term, there's an assumption that all of these businesses in New York City were being very profitable and they were growing. And if we just go back to the normal, everything is great. There are so many businesses hanging on by a thread before this crisis. The only way that we're going to stabilize small businesses is to give them the rights to a 10-year lease and the rights that they're not going to be forced to pay their landlord's property tax. Now, let me tell you why that's so important. When you have a decline in the revenue from these empty stores, that has to be made up by the budget. That has to be made up. And you know who's going to make it up? The people that are still in business are going to pay more of the landlord's property tax. Instead of paying 5% of the increase, they're going to pay 25%. In the future, if they don't pass our bill, in the future, the number one reason for small businesses to close and to lay off workers will be the increase of the landlord's property tax. That's going to be the factor. And that has to be addressed now. So there is no option. As a matter of fact, when legislators start talking about, oh, we need to do this program and that program, they're dodging the fact of the crisis that they created, that they ignored, that they were complicit to the rigging. They don't want to talk about their role in putting these businesses in a crisis for 10 years. And that's the machine in Queens, that's the machine in Brooklyn, that's the real estate control of lobby. And that's why we encourage all your listeners out there, take a chance, elect new people, honest people who will not be under the thumb of the machines or the real estate industry. That's if you want to save your small businesses. If you don't want a tax bill in the future, then you have no option. Because if you lose your small businesses, the real estate property tax in New York City will double within the next 10 years. So you have an option. You either elect people right now to take back the government from the real estate lobby, or be prepared to lose your small businesses, lose the jobs, and pay a fortune in the property taxes. That's the option.
So, Anthony, this seems so clear. How do you get this message out? I mean, there seems to be no question that if this message was heard by most of you would-be voters, you'd win in a landslide. I mean, this is so obvious. So how do you get that message out?
Well, it's about getting on programs like yours, about people reaching out. It is this process right now that they're going through is going to disenfranchise millions of voters right now. There's so much confusion about the process. So we have to be vigilant about telling people, now the primary, they're holding a Democratic primary. It will be June 23rd, 10 days early voting. They're also saying that they're going to allow people to vote from home. But you have to ask for the ballot. Even the governor kind of went backwards with words, right? Because first they said they were going to mail ballots to everybody at home.
Right.
Then they changed it. Yeah. Now they're going to mail them the application at home.
Wow.
Right? So they're going to create a duplicate process that's just going to be more confusing. And then they're not going to change the regulations because, a lot of absentee ballots were eliminated in prior elections. Why? Because they failed something simple. You sign the application, you put it in an envelope, you think that's good enough. But it's something simple as simply signing the back of the envelope you're mailing. You also have to sign the outside. So some people didn't do that. And so for technical reasons, they were eliminating people's votes. So what we're saying is if we're going to go through this process and kind of open the doors again and make it fair for everyone, then let's eliminate the nonsense, the old technical issues by which we eliminate people's ability to vote. And let's increase voter participation. Currently in Queens, it's like at 3%. So if you're going to engage in a process that's going to cause less than 3% to come out and vote, then you're doing us an injustice. You should be engaging in a process to say, how do we get the 90% of all of our communities voting to have their voices heard? Politics, as usual, has put us in the hole. The coronavirus has exposed all the inequities that have gone on before, that they have allowed to happen in all of our communities, from the housing crisis to the small business to the employment, everything that you see, to the lack of support for our hospital structure right now, the healthcare system. These things have already been in crisis mode prior to the coronavirus. The discrepancy in how we receive those services and how we make it non-discriminatory, that every community is treated fairly, everybody has equal access. These things have already happened and been existing for quite some time. So now we're talking about we need to have change. We need to have somebody who's going to be at the leadership role and take control of this thing and allow that there's a fairness and equity to all of our communities. That's why I ran for Queensborough president, because as a parent, as a resident, I was just tired of politics as usual, people making promises that they never keep. We have to take control because we already know that we're going to end up in another crisis is coming right behind this one. And we need to make sure that we have the proper response.
Let me make a comment, Jim.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, the people, the voters in Queens are used to hearing a name and they vote over and over again. And there's an assumption that they make that the people that they voted for are there fighting for them and working for them. And that the truth is that it's a myth. And I'll give you an example. In 2017, Queens led the city of New York in commercial evictions for the first time in its history, up 90%. And the largest petitions from community groups ever, 87 Queens community groups got together and signed a petition saying to the Queens representatives who made up the majority of the Small Business Committee, which resolves these issues, please vote for this bill and to save the, give rights to our small businesses and stop these closing, etc. Not one Queens lawmaker, not one responded. Now, if I told you today the crisis of the small businesses and the empty stores, if I told you that Queens has no member on the Small Business Committee, you would say that's not possible. It's a crisis. They're empty stores. They must have a representative, a voice. The truth is, this is how you rig a system. And not one Queens person will step forward and say, you know what, Queens needs to be on this committee to protect our small businesses, to look for a solution. But this is how it works at City Hall. The committees are chosen by the speaker, who's chosen by the real estate lobby. And we need to stop that. That's why I'm telling the people to take a chance, vote on people that they haven't heard of before, maybe they don't know, but the people that they do know have failed. And it's going to cost everybody. I mean, they have a proven record of serving the real estate over the will of the people. And these empty stores and the crisis that our small business are an example of that. They're proof of that.
And he also, just to be clear, Donovan Richards had his name on the bill originally, removed his name. Elizabeth Crowley originally endorsed the bill and also removed her name from supporting small business owners. So these are clear indicators that they're not supportive of the crisis that is going on right now. And in terms of other people, listen, I've been doing this community service work, civil rights work for over 30, 40 years now. All right, so I'm very well known in the circle of helping out people and doing the right thing. I'm a first responder. I have the experience necessary to know what it takes to help people in a crisis. I'm on the ground firsthand. I've also been an organizer and an advocate for so many years. And I've been a leader, not only just here in the city, but internationally. So I'm bringing all that expertise and all that experience that we've had, and I bring it to the Queensborough President Office as an organizer of people and moving an agenda forward. We cannot afford to wait any longer, and we cannot be passive in moving forward.
And Anthony, tell us a little about your the criminal justice background, because that's, of course, where we first met, talking about crime plus punishment, and as your leadership role there in organizing police officers who took a stand, unbelievably courageous stand against the illegal ticketing and summoning that they were put under, the quota system that they were put under. So you've had a track record of that, and speaking out truth to justice. Just tell us a little about your own criminal justice. You're also an advocate of what, closing down Rikers too? What's your position on that and some of the
absolutely
criminal justice issues?
Listen, criminal justice reform is not just about closing Rikers Island, right? Criminal justice reform, that's why I said they cause us to focus on isolated things. How did we get to the point that we were putting people into that system because they couldn't afford bail? Mm-hmm. How are we now trying to rescind bail requirements because we don't trust the judges that have been making the decisions, right? The judges have historically been documented as incarcerating more people of color, right? So people's response was, okay, so we eliminate bail so judges don't have those options. We again, the fact that we had so much, no longer have faith in the people that we've empowered is an indication that it's time for change. That's one of the reasons why we ran judicial delegates all over the borough of Queens, right? Why? Because they're the ones who are going to select the judges in the future. If we need to have confidence in the judges, in the legal system, that the people in the middle of the structure, we talked about bail reform on one side, we talked about Rikers Island on the other side, and they did no reform in the middle. They didn't reform the court system so that they move faster and hold these cases more faster, right? So people don't end up in Rikers Island, right? The defense attorney adjourns the case 3 times. The corporation counsel adjourns it 3 times. The judge adjourns it as many times as he needs. And by the time they all have all their adjournments, then we have somebody in Rikers Island that has been there for more than a year and hasn't been convicted of anything, right? But we're taking away their rights. So again, we chose to address the 2 ends of the problem and not put any reform in the middle. Why? Because we didn't have any confidence. The people and even the elected officials had no confidence in the middle of the system, that they chose to attack the ends, the results, but not how we get to those points.
Or again, to listen to the community and what they were speaking about. So all of this is so tied in to also what Steve is talking about here, which you're both talking about in terms of small businesses. I just want to briefly, I got this in an email today, rent strike that's being called for now. The largest coordinated rent strike in nearly a century to begin on May 1st. At least 400 families who live in buildings, each containing over 1,500 rent units, are coordinating building-wide rent strikes, according to Say Weaver, campaign coordinator for Housing Justice for All, a New York-based coalition of tenants and housing activists. Additionally, over 5,000 people have committed toward an online pledge to refuse to pay rent in May. So again, this is tied into fundamental survival issues. Thanks to the tireless work of tenants unions, activists, and a few progressive Democrats elected in New York in 2018, a number of pro-tenant legislative reforms were passed last year. These laws, while welcome, were but a small step in the right direction to undo the decades of unchallenged complicity between New York's politicians and the mighty real estate lobby. And to back up what you've both been saying, for rent strike organizers, the ideal is by no means a return to a pre-crisis status quo. As Weaver put it, we're demanding that we do not return to the world we had lived in pre-COVID, a world where 92,000 homeless New Yorkers and millions of people living just one paycheck away from eviction. Again, so go ahead. Yeah.
And the message is clear, right? Nobody wants to go back to where it was before. Right. The crisis gives us an ability to move in an entirely new direction. And if we're going to fix something, let's fix it long term. Let's fix it for the future. Let's fix all the things that were going wrong. And everybody clearly indicates there was something wrong here. There's a civil rights awareness, a civil kind of awareness in our community. We're waking up as a community saying that we've had enough and we're no longer going to tolerate business as usual. We're saying that the current responses are not the solutions for us moving forward. They don't help us. They don't fix us. They don't put us in a better place. So we don't want going back. We don't want politics as usual. We don't want business as usual. Let's say we've identified all these problems. The people have clearly stated they've identified all these problems, and they're saying, please, they're asking for help, but they're also saying they're not going to allow politicians or political pundits to just to do the normal business. We're going to stand up and they're going to be awake. So rent strike, absolutely. Think about all the unemployed people that we have currently. And at the end of this crisis, the homeowners who have mortgages and the people with the rent, they're just saying, guess what? At the end of the 3 months, you got to pay it all back in full. It made no common sense. If you weren't working all along, you're still not to find out whether you have a job after the crisis comes in, right? It's not going to roll out all at once. We're all not going to get to 100% where we were, right? You have to work to earn the money, but then the bill and all the relief efforts say at the end of the crisis, when they call it the crisis is over, they're going to make tenants pay 3 months rent. They're going to make homeowners pay 3 months worth of mortgage. It's not going to happen. So what you're looking at is that crisis you're talking about. You're looking at it at a response that the all of our communities, regardless of what level of life we're at, we're going to be in crisis mode trying to figure out how to survive with our families. And I've been at these
years to come.
For many years to come. I've been on these lines outside here at the relief points at several locations. These lines are 2, 3, 4 blocks of people who just need food, basic things. So we're not at that fix-it place. We're at a place that now we need to move in a radical direction. We need to look somewhere stronger and somewhere different, and we need to bring the resources to bear that actual impact, not make-believe impact.
And let me add something to what he said. If there's anything positive that can come out of this crisis, it's the fact it exposes the failure of government to address justice and economic justice for the New Yorkers that created a crisis that they covered up. Now, in the case of small businesses, they covered it up with business improvement districts. They covered it up with chambers of commerce. They covered it up with the local law people, the city council people, and the borough presidents. They worked as a team to cover up the consequences of this hyper real estate speculation. And now we have a crisis, and they're going to try to be the heroes. Oh, look at us. We have this wonderful program, and we're going to help this, and we're going to, don't buy it.
Public relations.
Yeah, don't buy it. These people caused the crisis, And the only thing one thing I agree 100% with is that right now we have an opportunity to change and bring in new people, but we also have an opportunity for long-term correction of these crises created by the real estate. That not only do we take back power, but we correct the crisis. Like in our particular case, 10-year leases. Anything less is an insult to these small business owners. 10-year leases, no taxes, and let me tell you, even doing that, it's going to take at least 10 years to rebuild our small businesses and put the empty stores businesses back.
And I want to say this.
Let me just. I just want to make sure I got this right. Doesn't Queens have more small businesses than any other borough in the city? Am I correct in saying that?
They have more immigrant small
Immigrant.
business. They have more immigrant small businesses.
Okay.
I think I would say that Brooklyn probably has the most because of its size, but Queens is a small business borough.
Yeah, okay.
All the Bronx is a small business borough. The Brooklyn is a small business borough. But the real estate have put the focus on big business. The Economic Development Corporation, the SBS, everything is big business, big real estate. Wall Street. I mean, this is where they're at. That's why they've ignored the backbone, the real job creators on Main Street.
Right, or pushing projects like the Amazon plant, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you were against that, right, Anthony?
Yes. Again, we gave away too much and got little back. And again, we have still seen a company has a history of abusing its workers. But we had a lot of elected officials. Tuesday they were on, Wednesday they were off, Tuesday was on. When it was popular, they were on. When it was unpopular, then they changed their minds again. We don't need people who are flip-flop in their decisions. We need people who are going to be clear about what's best for our community. You know, I wanted to say this. After 9/11, we missed an opportunity, right? Immediately after 9/11, our world came together. Our community here in New York, we came together. We were all the same. We were so close. Discrimination was not an issue. You understand the closest, the depths that we reached to be able to help each other. But then months after, 6 months later, time passed, and then we went back to business as usual, and we lost holding on to something that was so special. Now we're facing another crisis where people
had an empathy for us too at that point. They were reaching out to America and to New York specifically about what had happened. Yeah.
And now we have the corona crisis. It gives an opportunity where our communities are now supporting each other, building close together, not about discrimination. Unfortunately, the services have been discriminatory, but there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity to fix long-term discrimination issues. There's an opportunity to change how we work as a community collectively. And we're one of the most diverse boroughs out there is Queens, right? So how do we embrace all the different cultures that we have and build moving forward? We will lose an opportunity again if we go back to politics as usual and we continue to disenfranchise people, entire communities, for no other reason other than they look different or their religious belief is different than us, whatever the excuses are. We are human beings. And the response here now for change has to be holistic, where we start protecting everybody and we bring everybody together. And we have an opportunity that we cannot afford to lose it at this time.
Jim, I want to make a quick point. You mentioned about Queens.
Yes.
They have more immigrant small businesses than anywhere else. And in no city in the world would landlords be allowed to go in and extort the life savings, demand the life savings out of the immigrants, and the lawmakers, the so-called progressive lawmakers, allow it to happen. And they know it's happening. There was a study, 1/3 of Hispanic businesses were extorted. And these people did nothing.
Steve,
no city in the world.
Steve, spell that out very specifically for our audience. Tell them what you've seen, what you know about. How does this go about?
Here's how it goes about. Because our system, commercial lease, when your lease expires in New York City, you have no rights, none. The landlord can send you a notice. You have 30 days to get out. The landlord can do whatever he wants. Now, with all this speculation going on, it opened the doors for unscrupulous landlords and their agents to go to these immigrant businesses when their leases were up and say, I want cash. Today, I think the going price I was told was $50,000. I want $50,000 in a bag, cash, or I'm going to throw you out. Now, this is a serious thing. This has grown, and some of the businesses like bodegos and some of them, it's 80% are extorted, but they target immigrants. The second thing they do is that they've lowered the length of the lease, in some cases month to month or 1 year. And the reason they've done that is so that if a big bank comes along or a chain comes along, they can just get rid of the people 1, 2, 3. But in the process of a month to month or 1 year, they've killed the dream and future for these immigrant owners, and they've stopped any hiring or growth or anything. They've literally turned these people into indentured servitude to their landlords because of this greed. Now, this so-called progressive machine and progressive candidates, they know this, and they refuse to do anything about it. So I'm going to make a statement that people will say that can't be possible. But New York City government, the corrupt democratic machine, is the most anti-immigrant of any government in America. And you have no more to see how they prove this than to see how they treat the backbone of every immigrant community. The pathway for social mobility has always been the jobs through small businesses. And they don't care if these guys steal from these people, turn them into slaves, destroy them. They don't care. And that's a fact. And it's going on today. And our bill will change that.
And that's the progressives. Yeah.
That's the so-called progressives, the fake progressives.
And Steve, I want you to also talk about the fact that there's no control in how they can double and triple the rent from month to month. So there is no limits in which they can charge somebody to increase their rents. Is that accurate? That's why we had tried to pass the bill. The bill was supposed to be able to cure these things. So they can randomly just increase your rent. If you're going month to month or after the end of the year, everybody else has some type of boundaries. You can increase by so much, what's reasonable. But in this particular case, in the industry of small businesses, there is no regulation that says, they can go from 0 to 100, right? There's no boundaries there.
Yeah, we're not talking about any commercial rent control, right?
No,
right.
And I guess that's the balance. That's where it says that's how people survive, right? When you know your monthly bill is something, you get to plan ahead. All people, we all survive that way because we plan ahead. But imagine that somebody comes to you next month and says, guess what? Whatever you're paying is double, 30%, 50%, 70% increase. There's no control in that mechanism. There's no protection. So when we're talking about, it was just common sense protections for small businesses to be able to survive long term and to be able to continue to provide for the communities that they're in. We can't afford to have these empty spaces. And these big billionaire companies that come in, these change companies that come in, they do not provide the same level of support with the communities that they're currently in. So we need the small business owners. We need them to stay where they are, and we need them to stay long term.
Well, the point that I made in the beginning about the government saying let's return to normal, let's get things back to normal, is the fact that the majority of our small businesses will not survive normal in New York City, going from one crisis to another, and until they have the rights. Stop and think for a second. Suppose you had a year left on your lease. Are you going to go back in knowing that your landlord is probably going to double your rent or throw you out? There is going to be so many businesses that it's not worth it. They were just hanging on to begin with. So
Steve, what was the figure you gave us before in terms of closures, small business closures per month?
Okay, there's a court. There's a landlord and tenant court.
Okay.
And here's the figure. And this is a figure that they don't want you to know. The small business service centers will never mention it. And this is the evictions, commercial evictions, warrants where the judge orders warrants to evict. And if you walk by some store and there's a little marshal's tag on there, that's what it is. It averages $490 a month for 10 years. Now, what does that mean? Most businesses don't fight in court because they have short leases and it's very expensive to fight in court, and they're not going to win. So if they're evicting for $500 a month, that means over 1,000 or 1,500 a month are closing every month for 10
And
years.
all the workers working there too are being lost too. So
Well, of course they're being lost. Understand something.
Yeah.
If small businesses face a crisis,
Absolutely.
their workers face a crisis.
Absolutely. So you multiply that by who knows what.
No, we estimate 8,000 jobs a month are lost in New York City through closing small businesses. Now let's put this in perspective. Mayor de Blasio wanted to give Amazon billions of dollars for creating 25,000 jobs over 10 years. During 3 months, New York City small businesses will lose more than Amazon would create in 10 years.
In 10 years, wow.
I mean, this is, but again, you're not going to know this. The voters aren't going to know this because they have chambers who have made fortunes, bids, which are property owners. These are landlords who have made fortunes off of the increases. They're all there, the SBS, their local mall person, they're all there for one purpose, to serve the real estate. And that's what's happened. But that can't happen anymore. That's why we have to elect. There is no option. We have to elect Anthony Miranda and people like that who aren't in the pocket of the real estate, who aren't in the pocket of the machine that's created these crises. And that I'm begging the people of Queens that if you want to give these immigrant businesses rights, if you want them to grow and share in the American dream and take them out of harm's way of being extorted and treated like slaves, then you have to elect people like like Anthony Miranda. Now, let me tell you an example. If Anthony Miranda was borough president of Queens, he could go to City Hall and demand that a representative of Queens is on the small business committee. The people that are in there now, they don't care. There isn't anybody in Queens that's calling for somebody to represent these businesses in Queens. I mean, it is beyond shameful. It is disgraceful that Queens does not have a member. The most important crisis in the history of small businesses in Queens. And they don't have a member on the small business committee. You see the corruption, the immorality, it's an outrage. So there is no option. We have to elect this Anthony.
It is Anthony. Yes.
We have. We have to elect him. There is no option.
Well, now we got a few minutes to go, but again, Anthony, run us through a little bit about how people can vote for you, what's going on here with the mail and all that sort of stuff. Try to clear that up for us and the viewers here, because the primary is June 23rd. So you got less than 2 months to figure this all out. Where are we at?
So just so we're clear, the special election for Queens Borough President has been completely canceled at this point. They're only holding the Democratic primary, and that is June 23rd. As of June 13th, 10 days prior, they will start early voting. They currently, they're saying they're going to open some polling sites. If that happens, then we encourage people to, if they feel comfortable and safe, please make sure you come out and start voting early. Prior to that, 30 days prior, they have to start doing the absentee ballots. And that means that everybody has to call the Board of Elections, request your absentee ballot, fill it out. You can print it out online, fill out your absentee ballot and send that in. And then make sure that you vote.
Unless, Anthony, you could somehow get Cuomo or whoever it is to mail it out, is that still a possibility for people?
That's still a possibility. So people should, and everybody in their social media and their outlets should be saying, mail us the ballot. Mail the ballot directly to all registered voters now. We don't need to fill out an application. They already know that they're registered voters. They know their addresses. They have the information. They don't need to create another process in it. Mail the applications directly to every voter. Maybe for the first time, we go from 3% to 90% voter participation. Every vote is going to matter in this race. So
Yeah.
please do not allow anybody to take it. Whatever the obstacles you're facing, you can call us. You can reach out to our campaign emails if you're experiencing any challenges about
Right.
putting in your vote. And we will assist you in any way possible because it's extremely important.
What is your email? Where can we donate money
Yeah,
and volunteer? What is your email?
We can go to www.miranda4queens.com. On that site, we have all the buttons for volunteering, for making donations, joining our team. We're doing phone banking efforts. We are currently involved in different community outreaches as well, providing food to families and safety masks where necessary. They can also call us at 718-564-3553. Again, that's 718-564-3553. And the website is www.miranda4queens.com.
Right. And Steve, again, in just a couple of minutes we have, the status of the Survival Act is what? Where is it?
Okay, we have 29 votes. If the speaker allowed a vote, it would pass tomorrow.
In
The
city
problem
council?
is the speaker, Corey Johnson, has colluded with the real estate and rigged to stall the Survival Act. He was supposed on October 22nd, 2018. There was a hearing. He said that he was going to make some changes in the bill and move it to a vote. He lied. Instead, they stalled, and the real estate industry introduced a bill in 2019 in November called Levin's bill, Councilman Levin, which did nothing. It was a stupid bill that's going to basically they're trying to get Albany involved to come up with a solution for the small businesses, and
Well,
they just
that's not going to happen, right?
that's not going to happen. It's ridiculous. But it's a classic case of a lobby. Let me tell you, this is no different from the National Rifle Association.
Interesting parallel. Listen, I am so pleased to have you on. We're gonna get this show out across the boroughs and Queens. Anthony, you got to win this thing. Come on, people, with radical imagination, get out there with your imagination and spread the word. Thank you so very, very much, both of you. Steve, terrific in explaining all this. Anthony, thank you for your courage and your commitment. And
thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you all very, very much. Jim Vretto's here again on the Radical Imagination. We'll see you next week. And we're going to go out on an old sort of song by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. Carry On.
One morning I woke up and I knew it was wrong. A new day, a new way, and new eyes to see the dawn. Go your way, I'll go mine, carry on. The sky is clearing and the night is bright. The sun is come, the world is all around. Rejoice, rejoice, we have no choice but to carry on. The fortunes of fables are able